Can Canada build its way out of the housing crisis? Well, we heard a lot last week, a lot of conversations about this, and you can find our previous segments online on our CBC Listen page, also on our YouTube channel. Mark Carney's signature housing promise is to build 500,000 homes per year in the next 10 years. And to do that, he wants to create kind of a federal housing developer called Build Canada Homes. He's also promising to invest heavily in prefabricated and modular housing. So for more on the role of prefab housing, we have reached Alex Boston. He is an urban planning consultant working on land use, housing, and climate. Hello there, and a good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Gloria, and all the coasters.
There you go. Now, Alex, you wrote into us after hearing some of the segments of our series last week, specifically to address this central question: can Canada build its way out of the housing crisis? So what did you want to say?
Well, ultimately, we can't build our way out, but we can manufacture our way out. And that's something that the new Prime Minister has right. And he's the first major leader in the country to really recognize and make a commitment that off-site housing manufacturing is central to the solution. And this is because the biggest thing constraining supply and a growing cost driver is labor force constraints. We just simply don't have enough boots on the ground. When you and I were kids, Gloria, there were 8, almost 9 workers for every person over the age of 65. Today, there's barely 3. And that's impacting our healthcare sector, our retail sector, our transportation sector, BC ferries, and acutely our construction sector. And it's only going to get worse. So the only way we can boost productivity is taking housing construction and moving it into a manufacturing plant. And it's the only way we're going to actually really drive down emissions and build high quality construction, because it's where you can manage your quality and manage quality and cost. So I call it the ACE card, Gloria. It's about delivering on affordability, delivering on climate, and delivering on economic development. This can be an ACE card across British Columbia and across Canada.
Well, let's talk more about that. So when you say we can't build our way out of the housing crisis, we can manufacture our way. And we did hear from the Prime Minister saying that both the government and private developers would be building prefabricated housing. So what's the current state of prefabricated housing right now? I mean, what would it take to scale up to meet the Prime Minister's ambitions?
So this is the other thing that is really spot on correct with the Prime Minister's vision, is his acknowledgement that the single most important thing we have to do to grow the manufacturing sector is methodically grow demand. And methodically growing demand is critical for instilling investor confidence and confidence in manufacturing innovators to keep growing the capacity. And we can do that by harnessing underutilized public land, number one, where we can build both prefab housing supply, but also non-market housing. And this addresses an issue that was being addressed with differing perspectives by 2 of your guests last week. How do we address the affordability imperative? And it's critical to grow our non-market housing stock and not only start to meet what the rest of the industrial world is delivering in terms of non-market housing supply, but actually exceeding it. And we can do that on underutilized public land in part. And that's not just one important demand wedge. We need other demand generation wedges in the private sector too.
Okay, well, you're talking about being purposeful about demand, and I hear you. But I'm curious about the state of our prefabricated housing industry. Where are we at now?
Well, we're not manufacturing a lot. We build about 240,000 housing units a year in Canada. We probably manufacture about 20,000. And this is where the Prime Minister has to moderate his expectations about hitting 500,000 units per year by 2035. It's not realistic. We need growth. It may not be that much, but quality is as important as quantity. And we have in British Columbia some of the most amazing manufacturers, like literally some of the most innovative in North America, highly roboticized plants that are building top of the energy step code. And they're doing it in small towns. They're doing it. Have you ever heard of Lewis Creek? It's not far from Barrier, tiny little village, and it has a manufacturing plant that's steadily expanding. It's about 30,000 square feet a year. It's a super high-tech operation. Another manufacturer in Thrums, British Columbia, another tiny little village, right? This is one of North America's top mass timber manufacturers. And mass timber, all of that is prefabricated. The walls, the verticals, it's shipped on flat deck trucks and craned into place. You can cut construction times literally in half by moving into a manufacturing plant. And we can keep growing a value-added sector in small resource-based communities and Indigenous communities across British Columbia. This is something that's good for the economy, as well as for climate, as well as delivering on affordability.
Well, I'd never heard of Thrums, BC. So thank you very much for that. And who knew that it was a major mass timber production site as well. But it's just interesting, these conversations and hearing from the Prime Minister as well. The Prime Minister's idea is that both government and private developers would be building prefab housing, right? And they want to do that under this sort of umbrella of the government as a developer. How do you feel about that approach?
It'll all depend on the design. It's not necessarily a bad idea. I think there needs to be some flexible federalism. There's going to be some provincial jurisdictions where that federal role can be really, really critical. Frankly, in British Columbia, I'd defer to BC Housing. It's the strongest provincial housing agency in the country. There are, challenges that it has, but it's also an exceptional entity for delivering something like this. And largely, this doesn't mean, and people are misunderstanding, this isn't about getting the private sector out of construction. This is about a government agency coming along and serving as a general contractor, procuring services from the private sector. We need to stay in our lane, figure out we got to paddle our own canoe, figure out what we're really strong at and what we're not strong at. And one of the things, if the federal government is moving into this space, it has to totally up its game when it comes to procurement. Right now, the federal government fails on procurement in the defense sector. That's exemplary. We want to make sure if the federal government is in this space, they really, really strengthen procurement. I work right now with offsite manufacturers and also with developers, and they can build buildings, top quality buildings, passive buildings, near zero buildings. They can build them 30% of the minimum energy, 30% less expensive than the minimum energy code. But they say they cannot do that if they're building nonprofit housing because of the procurement challenges. This is an area that we really have to strengthen the work that we do.
Alex, really, I want to thank you very much for weighing in, for writing in the first place, and for sharing some of your thoughts and ideas with us as well. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Gloria.
That's Alex Boston, an urban planning consultant with Boston Consulting. And it's just a reminder, you are welcome to weigh in on anything you hear on the program. What do you think about the federal government's approach? What do you think is necessary in the conversation about housing in Canada today? On the Coast at CBC.ca. On the Coast at CBC.ca.